What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Before the weekend, there was news that was breaking that Nintendo would be moving to raise prices just about across the board, except for the Switch 2 and some choice accessories. Well, now we have the official announcement, the official price changes, and we can go over exactly how expensive everything has now gotten just within the span of a couple of days here today. Also, we are going to be talking about a showcase last week that unveiled a massive sequel, one that fans for the franchise have been waiting more than a decade to see come together, and we have a response from MasterCard around all the delisting of different adult games on places like Steam and itch.io, and well, this didn't go over well with the internet, and for good reason. All that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps that a ton, and if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below, and of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or link in the description down below, and we're going to start today with some unfortunate news for Bioshock fans. As we've known for a little while now, there is a Bioshock 4 that is in development. Unfortunately, does not look like things are going great with that. We can see this is posted. This is by Jason Schreier over on his social media account, saying the next Bioshock recently failed a publisher review, leading to a leadership shakeup and a narrative overhaul as employees worry that layoffs may follow. Sources tell Bloomberg. Bioshock 4, announced in 2019, has been in development for more than a decade. Yeah, that's, wow, okay. That's tough if it's been more than 10 years on that. However, it appears that the narrative is the issue here, and one of the reasons that it failed, its checkpoint, we can say, its milestone. And then to go a bit further, Jason Schreier says a remake of Bioshock 1 was also in development, but was shelved earlier this year, according to sources. And that one hits hard because Bioshock 1, I think, is a game that most of us are going to look at as one of the pivotal moments in gaming history. It is an incredible experience, and one that I think was the aha moment for many people with that generation on like the Xbox 360, sure. But here it's tough to live up to that, and now hearing about it having some struggles behind the scenes is concerning, but it appears that Take-Two is serious about trying to make it work, and you should, because that is a long-running franchise that has a lot of notoriety. So here's hoping they're able to work through whatever the issues are, and eventually get Bioshock 4 out, just hopefully sooner rather than later, as it's been more than 10 years already. Also, we did get a release date for Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection and a ton of different additions, along with a new trailer, which you can see. Now, some of the additions include just the standard day one. You also have just the collection or the deluxe edition. And something I thought was kind of cool, there's the collector's edition that has Goro controller holders. So, I mean, a lot of different options there, all the way up to $150. However, the standard edition caught a lot of headlines because while the PS5 and the Switch version are $50, the Switch 2 version is $60. However, it is not a game key card. It is completely on the cartridge. So I can't imagine this game's going to be very big in file size. It is that situation. It's going to be a couple of gigabytes and it's on a 64 gigabyte cartridge. Yes, but also, this is what people have said they're willing to do. Spend a little extra money, in this case $10 more than the Switch 1 or the PS5 version for the physical copy. Get everything on the cartridge. Would people prefer that this was also $50 and it was a game key card, or $60 with everything on the cartridge? Me personally, if this is kind of the compromise, I prefer that than just have another game key card that I'm really not interested in, especially around something like this, which sounds awesome. They even announced that Mortal Kombat Trilogy will be part of this collection. So I'm there day one, picking it up on the Switch 2, and it'll be nice to actually grab something from a third party for the system that isn't a game key card, because otherwise that collection so far for the Switch 2 is looking like a bunch of first party and the occasional third party like Cyberpunk. Oh, and we did have a closed beta that was announced. We can see this over on Sony's site. That for Marvel Tokon, and you can sign up for it here. The site was struggling there for a bit, okay, when they launched this. The closed beta we were running from September 5th to the 7th, so they go over sign up exactly how you do that. Mostly click register now. There's a registration form, and then they'll go ahead and pick out certain people and just have a list of participants for this closed beta so you can try out the game. Everything coming out of EVO has been very positive for this one, so yeah, it seems like a lot of people trying to get into this closed beta, that happening actually about a month from now. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo officially raising prices for just about everything except for the Switch 2 console itself and like physical games and digital games, which they say that's all still on the table, all right? Even NSO subscription service prices, that hasn't changed, but they also mention that could go up. And I think there's some strategy here from Nintendo clearly because they don't want to raise prices on the Switch 2 during its user acquisition phase. But depending on where their margins are sitting, as naturally tariffs are coming up in the discussion because August 1st, they go into effect. August 1st, Nintendo announces these price increases are going to be happening starting this week. Well, now we at least have some of the numbers as they were starting to pop up at retail on August 3rd. Wario64 just started to have a bunch of messages go out so that we can just kind of go over them as they were able to list the price, the original price to the new price, and we can see this. Starting at the top, NSO controllers. Yes, so NES, SNES, and 64 Genesis all seeing a price increase. The NES controllers going up to $70. The Super Nintendo ones, though, that one going from $30 to $35. Okay, I mean, look, the Super Nintendo controller is good, all right, it is. So it compared to some of the other third-party ones, $35, just seeing the price go up is just weird in the first place, but it's a high-quality controller at least. But then the N64 and Genesis, $55. Whew. I mean, the NES, at least that's two controllers, but wow, that is crazy. $16 amiibos are now $20, which amiibos have already been getting out of control, and to see them now $20, some two-pack $30 amiibos are now $40 or $35. Some of the third-party ones, I'm curious as we go along if those change in price. Like the amiibos are the things that feels like the most egregious, are those little amiibos getting upwards of $40 in some cases. Now, we already know about the systems because Target was kind enough to leak those early by accident, where we have the Switch Lite at $230, the non-Switch OLED, so the red box Switch at $340, and then the Switch OLED at $400, $50 less than the Switch 2, and which is the price point of you may as well buy a Switch 2. I know people love the OLED screen, but the trade-off for that versus spending $50 more and just getting an overall much more capable 4K system, it's like you might as well get the Switch 2. It's backwards compatible, play or Switch 1 games anyway. Now, Joy-Con 1 controllers, those have gone from $80 to $90, and the Switch 1 Pro controller, $70 to $80, and I know this is going to cause a lot of meltdowns online, guys. The Alarmo, $100 to $110. Other prices started to pop up throughout the day. For example, the GameCube controller, NSO GameCube controller, went from $65 to $70. The Switch 2 Pro controller goes from $85 to $90. And the Joy-Con 2 controllers, ladies and gentlemen, $100. Well, $99.99. So just, I'm sorry, 1 penny below. But Joy-Con 2 controllers at the $100 mark does sound crazy. And then also the Switch 2 dock set is now $125, up from $120, which actually, when you start adding things up, you look at the Joy-Con 2 controllers, that's $100, the dock set at $125, so then you're at $225. You start to kind of do the math and go, should I just buy another Switch 2 rather than extra Joy-Cons and the dock? I mean, maybe, but that's right now, Nintendo, all these things going up in price, again, the tariff stuff has influenced a lot of this, but they use market conditions, and it's a way for them to change pricing without being very specific as to why exactly. It's a very general, wide-sweeping term, and they've used it before, because this isn't the first time accessories have gone up in price. This has already happened, so this is just another way for them to raise them again, and if you look at their wording, the Switch 2 could go up in price. I don't think they wanted to, because they're trying to get more and more people to buy the system. And if you raise prices, it's just going to get harder to sell it. That's just the way it works. Eventually, you will price out a large number of people, and they're already kind of borderline because, I mean, the Switch 2, even with the game, $500 does sound like a lot when you think about Nintendo's history with their systems, where they're very sensitive to kind of the price point, especially at launch for some of their devices, and ones that they tend to struggle with, like you go back to the Wii U, that was a more expensive system. I mean, it's the Wii U. The Switch, I think at $300 was a good price point for what came in the box, although that also saw backlash at that time in 2017. But if they have to go to, say, $500 and then $550 with the game, or what if they try to pair 2 games with it and get upwards of $600 for the holidays, then you start to have people just tune out completely. and maybe they do look at your Switch Lite or, I don't know, a competitor system like the PS5 that's just outright priced lower. If I had to take a guess, their next step, if they have to, because the margins just keep getting lower and lower, and people say they don't have to, I've said this before, these corporations are not in this business to have fun, and they're in it to making money. So Nintendo likes to make money on all their consoles if they can when they launch. So Nintendo, in their mind, they have to. And if that's the case, I think NSO would probably be the next thing to go up. I think it would go up before the Switch 2 goes up, or who knows, maybe at the exact same time. The idea here is to take the cost that they're getting hit with, say with tariffs, and spread it out across the board. So you raise prices of a controller by $5 rather than $15 or $20. So that's kind of the strategy here. We'll have to see if Nintendo comes back to the table with more price increases, but I feel like for them right now, their plan is set at that 15 million mark for their first fiscal year that they're in currently, and raising the prices would throw them off course from that completely. So I feel like through the holidays, they might do some weird stuff with bundles maybe to raise the pricing, but I think for now, especially to the end of the year, they want to get through their first holiday period with their projected pricing that they had before at $450 and $500. So we'll see if that's able to hold. Next up, let's talk about the THQ Nordic Showcase, because they had a number of games there, but I will say one game in particular got myself, and I'm sure many other people who are fans of this series, very, very excited, because it's what, well, we've all kind of been waiting for more than a decade now. First, though, we'll go over everything that was there, starting at the top with SpongeBob SquarePants Titans of the Tide. They had David Hasselhoff in the trailer, which, hey, sure, why not? SpongeBob SquarePants, though, that does come out November 18th, 2025. I'm sure SpongeBob fans out there for these 3D platformer style games are really excited for that one. We had Recreation, which we've seen this before. They showed it again. It does look like a next level Burnout style game with destruction everywhere. They have roads fly, like being formed and run around all over the sky and the world. So that does look actually pretty cool. Tides of Tomorrow was shown again. That's February 26th, 2026. We have Wreckfest 2 Early Access is on PC now. Sacred 2 Remaster. I remember Sacred 2 from back in the day on the Xbox 360. I wasn't a big Sacred fan, but I know there were some people who were really, really into this game. Seeing the remaster, I'm sure, was really cool for fans of that franchise. The Eternal Life of Goldman. We've seen this before, but this is a better look at it, and I really like the art style, the animation, it looks awesome. It's a 2D platformer adventure, and I saw there was like an AMA, I think, with some of the developers and publisher, and they mentioned that it has Metroid elements to it, so I think it's kind of that Metroidvania open world style, where it's 2D, but you can explore and backtrack if you need to for certain things, I guess, but I just like the look of it. It looks really cool. Apparently, it's a lot darker than it originally appears as well, so I'm into it. I'll be checking that one out. Gothic 1 Remake, that's early 2026. And then they immediately went to Gothic Classic 1, 2, and 3, coming to Xbox and PlayStation in 2026. Reanimal still looks dark, super creepy. I like this a lot. This looks really cool. It has that little Nightmares kind of aesthetic to it. Q1 2026. Fate Keeper, that's early access on PC this winter. And then the closeout. The game that but when it was announced, I had mentioned, hey, I think the new Darksiders is going to be here. It makes sense. And indeed, it is. Darksiders 4, PS5, Xbox Series, PC, no release date. This is kind of just a teaser trailer for it. However, we did have additional press releases going out with IGN, Gamatsu, and many others kind of posting it. Like, for example, they say, Darksiders 4, like the previous entries in the series, is a third-person action-adventure game featuring combat, traversal, and puzzle solving in a lore-rich post-apocalyptic world. You play as one of the legendary horsemen, so the big thing with this, okay, and they say they each with their own unique weapons and combat styles. The idea, and it became clear, I think, when Darksiders 2 came out, because when we had Darksiders 1, it was a really cool third-person action-adventure, almost Zelda-like game at times, right? But I didn't know if there was going to be necessarily a sequel, because it was a brand new franchise at that time. Now it's very obvious as we've gone along. We've played as the different horsemen here. So you have war, death, Fury, and Strife. Remember, Strife was in that Genesis game. So we've already had each one of them getting their own game. And the idea here is now they're going to come together. There's 4 of them, Darksiders 4. It all lines up perfectly. Say the cinematic combat is described as fast-paced, visceral action, blending melee, fluid traversal, and natural abilities. Okay, the only story detail we have is that Darksiders 4 continues the saga of the 4 horsemen and picks up where the original Darksiders, where it left off. Also, according to store listings, there's online co-op for 2 to 4 players, as well as single player and split screen. So I just like everything that's being mentioned here. I do think for a game like this, the idea of split screen, online multiplayer, it makes sense because there's 4 horsemen. It's like you can pick who you want to use with their different abilities, movement, attacks, whatever else, right? And then you maybe have a couple friends even who join in, and you go through the game together. Split screen, awesome. That's just something that feels like it's been left in the past more and more as we've gone along, so I like to hear that. But really, this is the culmination, I feel like, of the entire series, going back more than a decade. So this is exciting stuff. We don't really know much else about it. Again, it was a pretty quick teaser. We don't really know release timing or anything like that. We haven't even seen gameplay for it, but I'm very excited to see more about this one. And now I will admit, I'm kind of interested to go back and play some of the older ones again. I think the one I would like to return to is Darksiders 2, the Definitive Edition, because they did get a PS5 upgrade, and I haven't had a chance to go back and play it, or just next-gen upgrade. Haven't had a chance to go back and play it yet. This has me wanting to, so I think that's what I'm going to do, is go check that one out again on the PlayStation 5. I already have it on the PS4, so it's like free upgrade. I just gotta pop it in and do all that. But really cool stuff. Let me know if you're a Darksiders fan, how you feel about the idea of Darksiders 4 and what's being described so far. And in our last bit of news, let's talk a bit about MasterCard as they decided to respond to the situation around these adult-themed games being delisted from places like Steam and itch.io, which was surprising that they responded in the first place. Although it could mean, hey, they're noticing, because there's been all the stuff around Reddit and other places where people are pushing to send emails to MasterCard to let them know how they feel, we'll say, about the delisting of some of these games. This we can see over on MasterCard News, where they say, MasterCard has not evaluated any game or required restrictions of any activity on game creator sites and platforms. Contrary to media reports and allegations, our payment network follows standards based on the rule of law. Put simply, we allow all lawful purchases on our network. At the same time, we require merchants to have appropriate controls to ensure MasterCard cards cannot be used for unlawful purchases, including illegal adult content. Anyway, this got like community noted into oblivion. It was crazy. People were responding to this constantly. It seems that focus on the idea of illegal adult content here is what really set people off, because, well, the stuff that's there wasn't illegal, technically, if you look at it, and Valve and Itch were fine. They do remove illegal content that goes up. So in their mind, for Steam and Itch, it was not illegal. It was perfectly legal there. So here's the thing, though, okay? So while MasterCard's saying, oh no, we didn't do this, well, Valve had a statement responding to this, to PC Gamer, where they say MasterCard did not communicate with Valve directly, despite our request to do so. MasterCard communicated with payment processors and their acquiring banks. Payment processors communicated this with Valve, and we replied by outlining Steam's policy since 2018 of attempting to distribute games that are legal for distribution. Payment processors rejected this and specifically cited MasterCard's Rule 5.12.7 and risk to the MasterCard brand. People seem confused by this. However, MasterCard has a helpful guide here, and nice little infographic here, showing us how this works, because it's already confusing. If you got to break out the chart like this, yeah, you got to make it a visual for people. So it's not straightforward. Go figure. Anyway, you can see here, MasterCard is basically an intermediary between acquirer and issuer, and they even have definitions for both of those. The idea is there's a merchant bank, there's MasterCard, and then there's the issuer, like a bank, a credit union, loan association, whoever. So in a way, MasterCard can lean on any of them, who then have to tell Valve what's what. So is MasterCard correct in the sense that they didn't directly go to Steam? Sure, they're correct, but did they have an effect on these games being delisted? Yes, absolutely they did. So they're trying to be roundabout and in a way try to say, oh, it wasn't us. When really it was, because at the end of the day, MasterCard and Visa do control just about all, they pull the strings for all this stuff with payment processors. So it's a way for them to try to get the heat off of MasterCard, because clearly they're seeing a lot of pushback and people are letting them know how they feel about sort of their control and what they've done here with delisting different games on Steam and itch. So my advice would be, keep letting them know how you feel and see what they respond to then. And before we go to the comments of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, are you planning to buy Battlefield 6? Okay, 76% say no, 24% say yes. And I saw in the comments, many people were like, I need to see it first, all right? Like, I can't necessarily trust EA after some of the previous Battlefield launches, because 2042 looked really cool leading up to a launch, and then it comes out and it's missing a lot of stuff. It feels incomplete, and it took them a while to get it to an acceptable state. So I completely understand that, and I mean, my response there is, yeah, let's see how this beta goes that they're going to be running next weekend, and see how the game feels, see if it does look like something that they are lining up for a much better launch, and when it comes out, what the reviews look like, because that's really going to be the tell. Are they prepared for launch, or are they prepared to work on the game after launch? That's the big question we need answered going into its release in October. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Acid, who says, game key cards do have two advantages over digital. One, it's resellable, and two, hard copy of the license. I think the hard copy of the license thing would be very much up for debate, not even with me, but with the publishers and the rights holders. That I'm sure they had a different opinion on that. But with the resellable aspect, that is absolutely correct. That is an advantage for the game key card versus just buying digital or a code in the box. However, something I've noticed, and I kind of think the same way too, when I go to collect stuff, I don't necessarily think about reselling it later. I just go to buy it as part of the collection that I feel like I'm going to keep for a long time, and may even outlast me then, depending on how things go with like disc rot, and we don't really know the ramifications of that, or even how long these chips on the cartridges will last in the long run. But that's kind of the idea. Maybe it's something you pass down to your new generations or kids or whoever, and it's not something I then think, oh, I'm going to flip this in a few years. However, if you're someone who buys games and then trades them in, yes, it makes a lot of sense to get the game key card over anything else, and you're probably happy that it exists. But you'd probably be just as fine if it was a physical cartridge with the game on board. So to me, I get the game key card. If you're all digital, who cares? If you're someone who trades in all the time, whatever, who cares? But I do think there is an aspect there that isn't necessarily, I can resell it. There is that thought of, I kind of just want to be able to have this game going forward without any concerns about, is the server on the other side to be able to pull this data down? Because let's be real, who knows what the world will look like in 10 or 20 years. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed last week's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you want to check out a teardown of the PlayStation 4 Slim and how I went over exactly, well, how Sony was able to make it that much smaller. I'll leave that right below it. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.